Hi, and congrats on making it through the most miserable month of the year. Welcome to our Mardi Gras celebration on this channel. Since it's the day before Valentine's Day this year, we're doing it a little early. So please come on down to Bourbon Street. Join me for some Mardi Gras celebrations. There will be beads, there will be beignets, and there might be a few bites ahead. The first book I want to talk about that I read for this video is Almost There by Farah Roshan. Now this is one of those Disney twisted tales, and I have read at least one book in all of those Disney adaptations. I read Kiss the Girl, which was super fun and adorable. How am I not gonna love one about Ariel? And then I read Desperate Measures, Jasmine and Jafar. Who knew? So when I picked this one up, I didn't know how YA it was gonna be. When they said YA, I was thinking older YA, not younger YA. Wrong! This is definitely younger YA, so expect the writing to be a little less sophisticated. I missed out on that completely. But if you want Mardi Gras, Mardi Gras, Mardi Gras, glitter thrown in your face, beads thrown around your neck, and you want a sample of every food you've ever heard from New Orleans, this is the book that is absolutely going to plop you down in the center of the action. So all of these books pose a question. They basically throw you to the end of a Disney movie and say, okay, we're going to twist it and say, what if? And this what if is, what if Tiana had made a deal that changed everything? And in this case, we get to the end of the movie. Tiana and her prince are both frogs. Tiana is about to smash this talisman that the voodoo shadow man has all his powers in and save the day. And the shadow man's like, wait, what if I bring your daddy back from the dead and turn you guys back into humans and make your alligator friend a human so he can be in a band like he's always dreamed of? Somehow this alligator's been playing a trumpet as an alligator throughout the whole movie. I can't explain how that works with alligator lips. So she agrees to give up her true love to make this deal so she can have her daddy back. We fast forward a year later, her daddy's there, her mom's there, they've got a garden, they've opened a restaurant, she's making jambalaya every night and she's adding this little drop of this little potion Shadow Man's giving her and she doesn't know what it does. And there's this weird fog rolling in and stuff's growing on everything in New Orleans and we know it's bad and she knows it's bad. And now the Shadow Man is like, hey, guess what? Our original deal, not good enough. You need to sign this paper with some addendums. And she's like, I'm not doing addendums. And so she goes on this adventure through the bayou. We get the swamps. We get all that part of New Orleans as well. It's just fun. And she brings along Charlotte, who, if you didn't see the movie, she's this amazing bubbly blonde who's just like super happy and always wanted to be a princess. Prince Naveen, who of course they start to like have these moments. And you see them like fall in love all over again. It's very PG, very sweet, but still like, oh. They're adorable, and they're humans this time, so it's less weird. Along with them comes, in human form, Mr. Alligator, who comes to realize that his alligator pals don't recognize him as a human. Boy, that was a fun scene for all involved. So that's the basic premise. This is the book that I think focuses most interestingly, given that it's Disney, on the traditions of voodoo and hoodoo and all of that the most, and does it the best and the most accurately. It goes into voodoo and the different types of voodoo and how good voodoo, which is a major part of New Orleans and the traditions down there, comes from Port-au-Prince in Haiti. We see a little bit about the Loire, and it was cute, it was sweet, it had heartwarming moments, it had bittersweet moments. It got pretty deep in the emotions. It really talked about magic having balance and voodoo having balance. You know, Disney's not going to totally crush you, but Disney lately likes to make sure that people have a sense of give and take as well. And in terms of the actual New Orleans Mardi Gras celebrations, this is your best bet. This is the one that is going to give you the most rah-rah Mardi Gras, all the foods, all the feels, all the scents, smells, the jazz music, all of that you are going to get the most of, because this literally has 3 Mardi Gras celebrations that take place in the book. So this was a great one to start my Mardi Gras reading experience off with. Also really glad she didn't get with Dr. Facilier the Shadow Man, because ugh. If you want to take a complete departure and have a little thriller experience, this is the Bachelorette Party, which takes place just after Mardi Gras. So right away, as you're running on down there, you get this sense of everything is just slightly in decay. There's beads hanging everywhere. There's decorations that you're stepping on the ground. You're kind of running over garland and everyone's sort of just tired. And as they're entering the city, it's just sort of in this slight sense of everything's messy and you're stepping on things and there's stuff everywhere. And it's post-celebration, which is a very odd setting as you go into your bachelorette party, but you already know it's a thriller. When you get to the house, after you've gone through the city, and you see that it's this haunted mansion, and you find out it's this creepy old, totally traditional, totally beautiful house with all of the amazing architecture you expect with the columns, the wrought iron gates and everything, and all the traditional balconies. But you find out the most famous guy who lived there, I think it's original owner, went crazy when he found out his wife cheated on him, and he decided that his children probably weren't his, and he like offed them all and like stacked the bodies somewhere in the house. Like, you know, this is going to be a creepy post Mardi Gras New Orleans but haunted setting. So if you're looking for more of that kind of thing, like you've grown out of the Mardi Gras stuff and now you just want to be haunted but in New Orleans, here's your book. So it has all the live music, all the drinks, all the brightly colored attractions. You see the restaurants, you see the food, you see all the good stuff, you see the decorations. They're just slightly drooped and hanging there. But oh boy, it opens with a detective investigating an active crime scene, and you don't know who it is. And it could be bride-to-be, the best friend, the cousin, the mother-in-law. Why would you invite your mother-in-law to your bachelorette party? The soon-to-be sister-in-law and the groom's beautiful best friend who's like totally Instagram model worthy. This was a fun one. I described how the setting totally fits. The house is great. It's one of those old southern ones. It has like little hidden places that you keep expecting to find. There's so many rooms you can always wander in on someone having a conversation maybe they shouldn't be having, maybe making an alliance you didn't expect. There's probably like some hidden passageways or hidden rooms. The thriller itself was pretty darn good. Check your trigger warnings. There's definitely some stuff going on here. I didn't give the author quite enough credit in terms of my expectations for what she was going to do with her characters. I was pretty impressed. She did a really good job with that. It's not your typical Mardi Gras story, but if you're looking for something a little different, this is kind of a fun option. Now, I had super high expectations for The Seamstress of New Orleans by Diane C. McPhail. I'm gonna say it right now. If you cannot handle the death of infants, particularly if they are maybe not accidental, I'm just gonna give you a sec to skip to the next book. This is not the one for you. Please skip ahead. Those who need to skip, skipped. Okay, here we go. So this book, it had the potential to be amazing. I'm saying it right now. This writer can write, okay? That was not the problem. The story opens up in the most confusing scene. We are on a train and we have a woman named Constance. A man comes up to her and he like looks at her and sees her eyes and he's like, you! And so she like takes off running and she goes like out in between the cars, right? And they're on a trestle, like a bridge trestle going over this like massive river. It's quite the drop. And the scene is so confusing because someone else comes out and like, you don't know if she pushes him over, this other person does, or who saw what or what she did. Anyway, this dude who like knew her goes over, bye-bye, buddy. Down he goes, kerplunk. She gets away somehow. They don't really explain that. Like, that's the opening scene. So then we see another woman. She's living in Chicago and she's like waiting for her husband and he has gone missing and we're seeing some of her memories come through. She had this horrible fever and her son had it at the same time and he was really, really young. And she remembers her husband like trying to assist with cold water in the sink and apparently he didn't want a son. She came from the plains, she doesn't have a lot of money, she finally reports her husband missing to the police. So we go back to the woman, Constance, who was in the first scene, and she is apparently super rich. She's living in the South. She is super excited because she is now a member of the all-women planning crew for the big Mardi Gras celebration. And this is what I thought the book was going to be about based on the back of the book. A cop comes to her door and is like, yeah, you remember you reported your husband missing? We found a body. We think basically a mob called the Black Hand were after her husband because he owed a bunch of money. Meanwhile, woman in Chicago, Alice comes down to the South. She's looking for work as a seamstress, ends up working, of course, with Constance. She's helping with the ball. She's helping her make this amazing gown. And meanwhile, apparently the Black Hand is indeed showing up over and over and over and over again. There's this constant sense of menace. The guy with a mustache keeps showing up and like telling their children, tell your mommy I'm gonna get her. hair and popping up out of a bush literally all over the place. The best parts of the book were the parts of the seamstress work. There were these amazing descriptions of the corsetry and how everything was constructed. And I wanted to see more of the meetings of this female crew and how they planned this Mardi Gras celebration. But the author never got there. The author got so mired in these descriptions of the Black Hand and all these things that I just wasn't that interested in. I wanted to see more of the Mardi Gras ball, and we saw it was literally 2 pages. It was so disappointing. The author got so lost in all of these plot points that were a little confusing, a little uninteresting. And I think if you're going to call it the Seamstress of New Orleans, we should see more about sewing, we should see more about dress design, and instead it was all about this menacing guy popping out of bushes, for the most part. If you are looking for a book that is going to give you the Mardi Gras feels, this isn't it. And if you're looking for something that's going to give you a lot of New Orleans descriptions, you're going to get some in terms of the household and some in terms of the social scenes and social structure, but it was pretty minimal. I have to say, this one is not going to give you what you want. If you want a murder mystery, weirdly set in 1900 that just happens to be in New Orleans, maybe, but I think there's better out there. I'm so sorry, guys. Now, allow me to introduce you to the queen of the Crescent City. Not that one. Oh, that's ironic timing, isn't it? I am sure that, what was that? A nibble on my neck? No, I felt nothing. I'm sure that when you even hear New Orleans, the very first thing you think of, or at least I do, isn't even Mardi Gras. It's vampires, and so I figured it was about time that I sat down and finally read Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I was a little nervous to read this. I was not sure what to expect. I was like, what if I read this and I hate it? What if I read this and it doesn't stand the test of time? What if I read this and it feels aged? You guys, I was spellbound. This is going to be a true classic. This is going to be up there with Dracula. I had no idea that every vampire book I've ever read, suddenly I can see the references or how they changed things or how they took inspiration from it. It really did. It's the spellbinding classic that started it all. This took the vampire myth and it made it its own, and this now has inspired every vampire book, every vampire, everything we've ever read. Things that I just took for granted as being vampire lore, they're Anne Rice lore. I don't even know what to say. And the writing is so hauntingly beautiful. Okay, let me tell you what it's about. If you don't know what it's about, I mean, the description is barely even a description. It literally just says, here are the confessions of a vampire. And it's hypnotic and shocking and chillingly erotic. And that sounds strange. There are no, like, smutty scenes. It's not like that. But it is erotic in the sense that it very much is about the body and experiencing life and experiencing sensations and experiencing what it means to live or not live or be alive or not be alive. And Anne Rice could make breathing sound erotic. It was unbelievable. And do you know what Anne Rice did that I still have not seen done to this day? You know how vampires can, like, turn off their humanity, and that's sort of become a thing that we've seen done in Vampire Diaries, Twilight, whatever. Every vampire sort of has something along those lines. Are they human? Are they not? Do they have humanity? Do they not? Anne Rice is the only one who made me believe that a vampire is nothing like a human. A vampire is truly something else. Her writing is poetry. She fills it with poetry. She even has an excerpt, a beautiful one of my favorite, from Rhyme with the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, describing Claudia. Poor Claudia. Claudia, if you don't know, is this poor 5-year-old girl who was bitten by Louis and then turned into a vampire by Lestat. This all starts with Louis, who was living his life out on a southern plantation. Yeah, it's problematic, I know. And one day Lestat, who is this old vampire, comes to him and is like, yo, I want your property. My dad's old. He needs a place to spend out his remaining years. I'm going to turn you into a vampire to get it. And Louis like, okay. And they have the most problematic relationship. I mean, you think you've seen abusive romantic relationships. Their relationship is the most complicated, wildly codependent relationship I have ever seen in a book, and at one point to keep him with him, because Louis knows Lestat is not good for him and knows Lestat is just this evil character. He turns his 5-year-old girl into a vampire. So yeah, they have a sense of forced family, not found family, forced family. And this is where the conversations start about, are vampires evil? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they sons of Satan? But Satan is created by God, so then they are still created by God. Are they cursed? Are they automatically evil because they have to drink blood to live? Have they automatically lost their sense of humanity because they are no longer human? Does it necessarily turn you evil? And this is where it starts to talk about what the true toll of immortality is. And we truly start to see vampires just giving up on life, not because they've lost people they've loved, but because they can't handle adapting to the constant change of time and seeing everything around them that they love change as well. This is a work of art. This is not just your standard, I'm a booktuber talking about a book I read and enjoyed. This, I want to put on my classics shelf. That's where it deserves to go. That's where it belongs. This is a step above. This is what I'm going to be referencing forever when I talk about vampire books, because it is referenced in every vampire book. I just didn't know it until this moment. And in terms of New Orleans, it starts New Orleans. It gives you the full sense of the old gentry. It talks about all of the old architecture. You're truly seeing it when it was built and when it was first coming to life. And it was beautiful. I loved seeing all that. Of course, the plantation stuff was problematic, but they return later. It becomes this anchor. It's constantly referenced. It's this place where Louis feels at home because that's where he was born. Even when he's in Paris, even when he's in all these amazing places, he's constantly talking about it and referring to it. If you haven't read this, please give it a try. I will not forget the experience of reading this for a long time. I think it's up there with the classics. I really do. It's so beautifully written. Another book that I did read that I no longer have, I did give it away. I read it earlier this year. I read the first 2 books by Charlaine Harris in the Spooky Stackhouse series, specifically the Dead Until Dark series, maybe better known as True Blood, the television series. It does take place in a fictional town called Bontemps. You can really feel how much it was created to feel like a small town set outside of New Orleans, and the larger city parts are meant to feel like New Orleans itself. I think it's fair to mention it here. I'm not going to necessarily talk about it for too long and say it's a huge recommendation because it doesn't specifically mention New Orleans by name. The show was filmed there, however, and I do think that it will give you the New Orleans feels. Since it does take place in Louisiana, I do feel like it's fair game to mention it here. I don't think it aged particularly well. Specifically, the main male love interest, not my favorite, and Sookie Stackhouse herself, I feel like, was one of those female insert characters that we saw a lot in the early 2000s. We can do better now, guys. We can do better now. Specifically, if you're looking for a TV show to watch, I'm going to say go with the originals. This is a spin-off of The Vampire Diaries. Now, The Vampire Diaries, we did have brothers who started off as Confederate soldiers, which we saw also in Twilight. Very interesting how this Southern gentleman theme continues on. In the spin-off, we are following the original vampires. Now, I'm mostly in it for Klaus and Elijah. I say Caroline forever, so I'm fine getting Elijah. These are the original vampires. They do have a sister as well, Rebecca, and some other siblings who pop up later. And they basically head on down to New Orleans. They're taking it back from this former friend / protege, Marcel, and you see so much of New Orleans, okay? The plot is really great. It gets really, really intricate. They are also working against witches, so you see a lot of the voodoo type witchcraft that does fit in so well with the New Orleans magic that we would come to expect. You see everything down there, from the old crypts. I don't know if you know this, but you can't really bury bodies too well down there because the water line is so high that bodies just kind of get returned. We see that, we see the voodoo type magic, we see a lot of those types of traditions coming in to play with herbs and that kind of thing. But they do create their own lore, of course. The vampires themselves are the type where you see a lot of that very vicious politicking come into play, and you know, you step out of line, you're going to be in big, big trouble. Sunlight, of course, a major issue, but they have their ways around that nowadays. But New Orleans is shown in her best and, well, sometimes brightest light. We do see parades and we do see Mardi Gras. We see the bars and the fun and Bourbon Street and beignets and all that good stuff as well. You are going to see all the architecture. You are going to see amazing old buildings. You are going to see all of the good stuff. So if you are looking for a TV show that is just going to throw you into New Orleans, give you that little nibble on your neck and some drop-dead gorgeous vampires who do have much more of a human sense and a much less melancholy sense, I will say, head on down to New Orleans with Klaus and Elijah, and you are going to have a great time watching the originals. And they do have books as well, but the spin-offs sort of happened around the same time that the books were written, or even before, so I'm not talking about the books. The Vampire Diaries might have been written first, but the show really was the driving force for the originals. After this, I want to talk about Don't Hex and Drive by Juliet Cross. This is the second book in the Stay a Spell series, and when I saw that the second book was about a vampire and the series takes place in New Orleans, I was like, oh! And then I saw the cover and I was like, oh, could it possibly have something to do with Mardi Gras? Are you like hinting at me maybe? No, we're not going to do this. We are going to have a really good looking Bollywood movie star vampire who's going to show up in New Orleans and fall in love with one of the four sisters who, she's not really a people person. She describes herself as like very shy and like she doesn't really know how to interact with people to a certain extent. And I think that's why I had a harder time connecting with her at first. But she spends most of her time in a greenhouse and working at a local animal shelter. She's a conduit, so she's a healing witch. But all of a sudden these girls in the neighborhood are disappearing. So Mr. Bollywood vampire named Devraj shows up, and he is what's known as a Stygorn, which is like a super powerful vampire who's basically like a bloodhound. He can smell anything and everything, and he can trace people really easily. So he's brought in by like the king of the vampires, and it's basically a love at first sight kind of thing. And they are attempting to work on this case together. And this is basically all about their relationship. This book focuses more on Devraj's Indian past, and he does a lot of cooking, and it made me really crave chicken tikka masala. I had so much fun reading it. I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as the first book, simply because I did not relate to Isadora quite as much as our main chick in the first book, Izzy. She's very reticent, shall we say. She doesn't talk a lot. She's not very bubbly. She doesn't speak her mind. She's very shy in the beginning, but she did warm up. Things started getting funny as the story progressed, and you know what? I realize that some people really are like that. Like my husband, for example, he is not a super big people person. He doesn't talk a lot when you first meet him. If you don't know him well, he's not going to say a bunch. But then when you get to know him, he will open up and talk about anything. He's hilarious. So some people really are like that and are very different with different people. And I need to give the book more credit for creating a character that is so true to that type of person. Not every heroine is going to be those outgoing, bubbly sunshine characters or those super take-charge, sarcastic characters. You know what? It ended up being really refreshing, and as a result, their relationship developed in a slightly different way, and it was really romantic and sweet, and they ended up being really fiery together. Like, that was pretty darn good. Juliet Cross really does those scenes very well. She doesn't like do anything that I would consider beyond vanilla, but for vanilla, this is it. I didn't like this mystery quite as much either. It didn't have like spells and magic as much, so I think I enjoyed it less just for that reason as well. I'm big on like witchcraft and spells and stuff. So I enjoyed it, but I think this is a 4-star, not a 5-star, which is a bummer, but I'm absolutely going to keep reading the series. I absolutely love the series, and this one's so good. Good book. Totally enjoyed it. I think it mentioned po' boys twice, so almost no New Orleans vibes, and 0 Mardi Gras. Sorry, guys. I also wanted to mention Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things by Margie Fuston and Mr. Rorosori. I hope I'm saying your name right. We'll be very happy to be seeing this one. I did talk about it, I think, once before. Now, it's not set during Mardi Gras, but this is basically a love letter to vampires and to New Orleans. So hear me out on this one, even though it's set in the summer. This is about Victoria, and she and her dad are totally obsessed with vampires, and this is super, super exciting because vampires have just like kind of come out and been like, hey, we're real. Except people are stupid and we can't have nice things because when people are afraid of things, they tend to like screw it all up. So vampires go back into hiding pretty much right away. No one's shocked to hear this. And this is a total bummer, but Victoria and her dad are still kind of like, okay, we're going to still plan our trip to New Orleans. This is going to be great. We want to see like the birthplace of everything. Anne Rice started it all. And that, you know, if we're going to maybe accidentally bump into a vampire, it's going to be down there. But oh no, Victoria's dad has terminal cancer and he's not going anywhere ever again. So Victoria's super depressed. She skips her senior class trip and her dad's like, no, you need to keep living your life and you're gonna go down on this trip to New Orleans for me. You're going to take all the pictures, you're gonna see all the things, you're gonna send me the postcards, you're gonna do it all. You're gonna go with your estranged bestie Henry, who also skipped the class trip for no reason at all. He might as well have been standing in her backyard with a boombox over his head screaming I love you, but sure, no reason at all, whatever. So they go together. They're down in New Orleans, and lo and behold, she finds this guy who's cold. And she's pretty dang sure, like, this guy's a vampire. She's like, can you turn me? I want to be a vampire. She's not telling him that her plan is to get turned into a vampire so she can go back home and turn daddy so he never dies. Like, which, great plan, right? The vampire's like, you need to prove to me that, like, you really know how to live if you're gonna live forever. Here's what I'm gonna do. You're gonna go to this bookstore, and I'm gonna leave a note for you every morning, and you have a task you're gonna complete, and you're gonna solve this like little mystery I have for you. And if at the end I am satisfied, yeah, I'll think about it. Meanwhile, she's like, oh my god, I have to like fake all this crap. I have to pretend I'm like living my best life and being totally happy. My dad's at home, he could like die at any minute. Great times. And are you actually a vampire or not? And will you actually turn me or not? That's the premise of the book. So this will take you on a journey all through New Orleans. I mean, this guy's having her like singing with a jazz band on stage at a club. She's gonna be like exploring a graveyard and like kissing a guy in a thunderstorm in the middle of one. She's eating fresh beignets right with the powdered sugar all over her face. And all the poetry, it's all about death and humanity. I appreciate the poetry so much more. Originally, I thought it was super pervasive and I found it very frustrating. Now I think it is meant to be almost an homage to the constant reference to theater and literature and exploration of culture and art that Louis was using to try and hang on to his humanity and to explore his humanity in Interview with a Vampire. It was so referential and I appreciate it so much more now. You are gonna get every taste of New Orleans and the vampire books that you want in this one, and I think it's a great choice and I think it's such an underrated choice. And it's a standalone. So if you want something that is sweet, bittersweet, heartbreaking, but will not absolutely shred your heart, Margie Preston, wow. Great, great book. For the last 4 books I want to talk about, it is actually a series. I want to talk about The Beautiful Quartet by Renee Ahdieh. Renee Ahdieh, by the way, is the author of The Wrath and the Dawn, which is one of my favorite duets of all time. So I was so excited to pick these up. I was like, vampires, they're coming back in. We're in New Orleans. I can't wait. And I started reading The Beautiful and I didn't think it was quite as good as The Wrath and the Dawn, but let's talk about it. So it is 1872. It is New Orleans. We have a group of girls who just came over on a boat for various reasons and they are living in a convent. The main 2 girls we are going to be talking about at Ursuline Convent are Celine and Pippa. And they are hanging out. They are seamstresses, and they sort of become embroiled into this more glitzy, glamorous side of society. Celine in particular, when she catches the eye of a guy named Sebastian. We're calling him Bastion. And he belongs to, wait for it, are you ready? the Coeur de Lions. And she is designing a dress for a girl named Colette there. And it is very clear, like straight off the bat, they're vampires, okay? There's not a lot of mystery going on with what they are. But she's designing this dress for Colette, who is a member of the court. And by the way, these girls are like discovering all this right along carnival season, and they're not allowed to attend because of course they're like staying at a convent. But we sort of get a taste of things. So we sort of are like peeking at parades and seeing certain things, and then we're being told about like some of the exhibitions and things that they're seeing, and they're like scandalized by. So it's really fun. We are seeing some of the Mardi Gras stuff that is going on. And of course, they're describing all of the glorious architecture. We are seeing the architecture in the convent, we are seeing the architecture in some of the shops, we are seeing the streets, we are seeing the architecture in some of these grander estates, and the club, of course, is very grand, and they have access to all the best restaurants, and we're seeing some of the amazing food there. So believe me, this is hitting every mark in the New Orleans and a fair bit of the Mardi Gras checklist I have set for you, okay? You will not be disappointed there. But we are also hitting a murder mystery because all of a sudden there seems to be a serial killer on the loose. Each body gets a little like symbol written in blood next to it. For some reason, Celine, like, she has this knowledge of arcane like writing. It becomes clear that she is in the killer's sights, and like she wants to protect her, and the captain of the guard, or the lead detective on the case, is half in love with Celine too, because of course they're all in love with her, and he's like, I want to protect you too. So we've got the murder mystery, we've got the seedy underground, we've got the Court of the Lions, we've got vampires, we have everything New Orleans could possibly want to offer us. We've got a forbidden love going on, we've got creatures of the night, we've got it all, you guys, in the beautiful. The book itself, I would say, was maybe 4 stars. The writing wasn't quite as brilliant because she was trying to take so much inspiration from The Interview with the Vampire and didn't let her own voice do quite as much, and it ended up somehow sounding a little younger. Her own writing is so sophisticated that Renee Audier did not need to change it at all. So that was a little disappointing for me. But overall, you get the traditional wonderful vampire romance, and the setting made it perfection. The murder mystery itself is very like, I don't want to say Dan Brown Angels and Demons, but it's kind of what it felt like in a way, with like the symbolism and the writing in blood and the creature stalking. I definitely loved the first book in this series. The second book, we got a point of view switch to a certain point, and ordinarily I would not have enjoyed it, I don't think, but Renee Audier made it work. I liked the second book better than the first. This is when she pulled a Sarah J. Maas, and I don't mean this in a bad way. If you hate Sarah J. Maas, hang on. The whole big magical world, this is when it like cracked open. We weren't just following this like murder mystery and these small characters. This is when the whole magical world opened up, and we saw what Renee Audier had been planning. We saw everything. We did see a lot more away from New Orleans, but New Orleans maintained the sense of the home base. All of the other surrounding characters, I felt like they were coming more into play. We were learning about them. I was so happy to see more lore come into play. I felt like the writing finally found its anchor. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I really did. Then came book 3, and it completely pulled something that I should have hated. This book did what I loathed in A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I think it was, by Bridget Kemmerer. This switched couples, okay? I'm just gonna tell you right now, it kind of switched couples. I fell in love with this couple so hard. I loved this couple. I mean, we still saw the other couple, okay? Like, we absolutely did. But we got so many more points of view. I felt like, oh my god, I should be losing my mind. Renee Audier pulled it off. This was almost like a 5 stars. So close, so close. Everything was going great. The build was slow and steady. And when we hit the last 2 pages, the cliffhanger, it was as mind-blowing, okay, as the end of Crescent City 2. It was that kind of jaw-dropping, oh my god, you just did not, what did you just do? I can't believe this just happened. I need the last book right now, and thank god I had it. This was amazing. We still had our vampires, don't you worry. We maybe had some other magical creatures that you would expect who come along with vampires, like coming on into play. It was everything I wanted and more, and I was beyond psyched to pick up the final book in the series. This book has the possibility to be like my favorite book of the year, and it's only January. This book could blow my mind and be everything and anything Renee Audier. You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it. You are gonna like top Sarah J. Maas. You're gonna do it all. This is, I hated this book. I hated this book. What was this book? I was halfway through this book and I was like, nothing has happened. Has anything happened? I'm bored. Why am I bored? What is all this? Why are we doing this? What are you doing? There should be a massive explosive ending to this. Where are all the fun references? You had this amazing opening to explode your world and make it 10 times bigger, and you just ignored everything you could have done. And Celine, I hate you. She had a personality transplant. Am I ruining the series for you by saying that? I don't know. Maybe. Sorry if I am. But you know what? It's called The Ruin for a reason, because it ruined everything. I hated this book. And I was like, is this me? Is this me? Did everyone else love the ending? No, no, no. It was just a mess. It was messy and confusing, and it felt like nothing got tied up, and she spent so long doing things with weird random stuff that made no sense and nobody cared about, and then the ending of the book was completely rushed as a result, and we didn't get anything tied up that we needed to get tied up, and she didn't do any of her characters justice except perhaps one. And I loved the first 3 books. They were fantastic. They gave me the best of New Orleans. They did some great stuff with vampires. They gave them little original twists that I loved. And then by here, we forgot about half the vampires. What happened? So this was a very anticlimactic end to my video. Believe me, when I finished the end of that book, I was incredibly unsatisfied. So I feel it too, guys. I do. Very sorry for that. Of all the books that I read, the most Mardi Gras was absolutely almost there. This is the one that is going to just throw all the Mardi Gras at you. It's got 3 Mardi Gras in it. It has every description you could want. All of the food, all of the parties, all of the jazz, all of the fashion from the 1920s. Definitely the most Mardi Gras of Mardi Gras, but it's very innocent as well. So I don't know if you associate innocence and Mardi Gras. As far as stuff to watch, definitely the originals. That's got your vampires, which I always associate with New Orleans, and the eye candy is glorious. As far as the best descriptions, the most seminal classic, you have to go with The Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. You're never gonna beat it. I think this is gonna be a classic forever and ever and ever, and for very good reason. The language is stunning and beautiful, and it gives us all of the inspiration for our modern vampires. It references so many classic pieces of literature. It's never going to go out of style, shall we say. If you really want a love letter just straight up to New Orleans, Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things by Margie Buston is a great, great, great way to go. Every chapter is just giving you something else to enjoy about New Orleans. And finally, yes, this gives this. Nope, not this one. At least the first 3 books, these were great. All that I could ask for in the late 1800s New Orleans, and it gave me the Mardi Gras flavor of decadence and partying and indulgence, and also the dens of iniquity at the Coeur de Lions. Like, that's what I really wanted, and I absolutely felt that every moment in this book. And I loved the first 3 books, but the last book was a mess. But happy Mardi Gras. Happy February. Welcome to the month before spring. And are you going to dump snow on us? Are you going to be nice to us February? I don't know. I'm going to be very nice to all of you and bringing you lots of videos with love. Perhaps we'll get some more nibbles on our neck. But thanks so much for joining me and staying for a bite. I had so much fun making this video and reading all of these books, but I will let you get back to your book. I'll be getting back to mine. Expect so much romance coming from me, you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye. And if your last name, by the way, is Michelson or Salvatore, my blood type is A positive. That means it's A+ blood.